This time on Finnegan's Garage, we're back at Harrell Engine and Dyno in Mooresville, North Carolina to find out why is Blasphemi not making the power of the rear tires that we're expecting. Okay. I think we know why. It's something to do with this right here. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Let's do something I rarely ever do, and that's ask you guys to subscribe to this channel. Tell your friends about it. Hit the like button. Leave me a comment. Tell me if I'm doing it wrong. Tell me if you got a better idea. And in this video, we're going to autopsy my 528 cubic inch Chrysler Hemi that was put together by Harrell Engine and Dyno. Then I went to drag week with a fuel pump that was not up to the task of fueling this beast on E85, and we melted it down. We knocked all the tension out of all the rings. We collapsed the ringland on one of the pistons. I think it was number 3 maybe. And then Tony Angelo and I heroically rebuilt it during drag week with the one spare piston I had, and then made one pass at Bowling Green on my way home. And then since then, we've spent a bunch of time on the dyno here at Harrell Engine and Dyno. Right now we're in the engine room because every time we were on the dyno, we just weren't making the power we thought we should be. And Pete pulled the Hemi out of the car with us, tore it all apart, shot a bunch of video on his own, and we were going to discuss what's happening with this thing right here, right now. The great thing about working with Pete is not only can he build the engine, but he can machine it. He knows how everything in this room functions. And because we're no longer on a crazy deadline with Blasphemi's Hemi, he's going to go back and do some things that we wanted to do in the beginning, we just didn't have time to do, like measure the combustion chamber volume of my cylinder heads. The first thing you're going to see here after he pulls the engine apart is he's going to take these stage 5 Hemi heads, flip them upside down, and fill the chambers with a liquid that you can measure the volume of. And then he and I are going to autopsy the pistons and see what's going on with every one of those things right there.
All right, one of the things that we have to do this go around on this thing is to confirm that our compression is what we think it is. And one of the things we need to do to accomplish that is to determine the chamber volume of these cylinder heads. We know what they're supposed to be, but let's double check and make sure for ourselves. And the way we do this is with a barrette that we're gonna fill with liquid, and see how much liquid it takes to completely fill this chamber.
Using water or alcohol? Or both?
Both. So I'm getting 169.
Well, I think what Rick figured it at 170, right?
All right, so we got 169. If you look, we got a full beaker and then a 69. So that's pretty close. They claim 170. That's pretty dang close. So we don't have a crazy problem there, but we had to confirm because we were just kind of trying to double check on things. Anyhow, 169 is what we're going to use for our math here forward.
And to recap, these are CP pistons custom made for this combo. These are a set of aluminum rods that I'm actually not sure where these came from. Pete can tell us, but we went with aluminum rods due to the fact that we were in a time crunch and we had a piston. We did not have a rod for this engine. We went with a rod we could get our hands on, which ended up putting the piston down in the hole about 30 thousandths further than we wanted, so we had less compression than we wanted. But more importantly, we had some things going on where we couldn't run the cam timing where we wanted, and while at drag week and or here on the dyno, we had a couple of mishaps that resulted in this thing seeing not enough fuel and maybe too hot of air, and we've got some issues with our rings here. So they're all marked on the rod and numbered, so we know which cylinder they came out of. For instance, this is number 5. And the first thing I look for when I take these apart is, do we have any tension left in the rings? Now, let's talk about why this engine came apart. On one pull, it put 1,000 to the tires. On the next pull, it put 100 less. We had one cylinder that had less cranking compression than all the others. We had it puffing smoke intermittently. There were just things going on that didn't make us feel real great about taking this thing to drag week, and we didn't want to go through what we went through last year. So we ripped it all apart. Now, this one, number 5, the rings seem to move just fine. The ring gap is a little smaller than I would expect coming out of the motor. It's possible we don't have all the tension in this. Oh, there's Pete. Okay. So Pete's here, which is good because I like to think I know what I'm looking at. Odds are good I don't. At least not completely. Okay, here's number 5. You want to put them in order and just go through them?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's 6, there's 5. There's 3, 1, 8, 7. Okay, 2. So this is the one I was most interested in because this is the one that had less cranking compression than all the other ones. What do you see?
Yeah, okay, so the main thing is this top ring is just completely annealed.
Oh, there's no gap almost.
Yeah, there's hardly any gap. So the compression ring is just cooked, you know, and
that's heat related there.
That's heat, yeah.
And are we talking heat from just the combustion process or the fact that at one point we had 250 degrees of air inlet temp?
Well, no, it's not really the air. We manage that with fuel.
Okay.
In the E85, we use a lot of fuel, so it manages it. And that's one of the reasons we use it E85 sometimes. But our tune is just out of whack, right? Now, the main thing is we're searching for missing horsepower with the laptop,
right?
And we're gonna fix it so we don't have to do that. You know, we got missing power and we're trying to tune it to death to find it, and a lot of times that's not the best way to do things. You know, that's the last place you want to go.
Right. Yeah, we're literally in there trying to find 10 and 20 horsepower at a time.
Right, and we shouldn't have to do that.
We should easily be there to begin with.
Right.
Okay, so this one, knock the tension out of the top ring. Are the ring lands okay on this one?
No, this one's pushed down right here, just a little bit.
Okay, so that ring land being pushed down, that's not heat. Is that detonation that did it?
Well,
or is it heat that did it?
Heat and detonation. It's not so much just the heat. The detonation brings tons of heat with it. Right?
Okay.
Once things start to get out of control in the chamber, it just pounds everything.
Okay.
Once it starts to happen, it's quickly, until you let out and start over.
Right.
It's hard to get it back under control, and that heat builds up and detonates and beats and bangs and hammers everything, and that's what we got here. You know, and that's why the second ring is sticky, because the first land is pushed down on it, so it's tight right there. Like it'll move, but not like it should be free.
Right.
And it's not.
And the interesting thing about all this is we know approximately when we started having problems. You know, Pete could see in the EGTs that number 2 was different than all the others. And so he started compensating in that cylinder because we have injectors in our individual ports, and then we have injectors in the blower case. And those are set up where the bulk of the fuel should be going into the blower case, and then we should be trimming the individual ports to compensate for things like this one cylinder is running different than the others. And we had an issue where Pete and I weren't communicating, and he was trimming this cylinder and we weren't getting the results we were looking for. And when he told me he was, and I was sitting there going, well, wait a minute, the whole car got ripped apart at drag week. And I walked out there and there's 2 sets of injectors, there's 2 plugs, and they're marked clearly. And they got plugged back in backwards at drag week when Tony and I rebuilt the motor. And so Pete was making trimming to what he thought was cylinder number 2, but that fuel injector was in the blower case, according to the wire in the EFI. And so nothing was happening.
Right.
And so I'm pretty sure that's when this...
Yeah, I ended up putting like 40% in this hole.
Right.
But the EGT never did anything.
Right.
That's because it was happening in the blower instead of the port, and anything you add in the blower is liable to go pretty much anywhere but where you want it to go.
Right.
So who knows where it went, but it didn't go in here. So that didn't help the situation.
Okay.
But the root cause of this whole problem is that, to be honest, the motor's kind of a dud. So,
I mean, I wasn't going to say it. It's got potential is how I like to think of it.
Right. So we're going to make some changes to fix the root cause of the problem. Now, when this thing, the reasons that it's that we have this issue is because when we built this thing, especially at the end, we're getting kind of a mad dash to make drag week, and
It was a last minute deal.
when they sent the rods and the pistons, the rods had a different wrist pin than the piston. So we had to
scramble.
We had to scramble because it was going to be another 14, 16 weeks to get another set of custom rods.
Yeah.
So,
originally, we were going to have steel rods in this motor.
Right.
And then our steel rods showed up with the wrong bore in the small end.
Yeah.
So you found an aluminum set of rods.
I rushed a set of aluminum rods. For custom rods, so you know, generally speaking, you can get custom aluminum ones way quicker than custom steel ones. So I called my buddies at R&R and got a set of rods made, and we're all good. But that necessitated a sacrifice, and that is aluminum rods. You've got to you can't put this. You got to put it down the hole a little bit to allow for.
They stretch.
Yeah, they stretch. And you have to give more clearance, or else.
Okay. So you can't zero deck the piston.
Yeah. Let's say if you run 40 thousandths quench on a steel rod.
Okay.
Generally speaking, especially on a big block, you can't think about doing that. You need probably 70 or more
For an aluminum rod.
For an aluminum rod.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
So, what that does is that changes our compression a little bit and just alters things.
Yeah, what Pete's referring to is the distance between the top of the piston and the deck surface of the engine, which is where the cylinder head bolts to, which is where the valves, come past. In a max effort NA deal with steel rods on a big block, you can zero deck those things because then you have like a 40 thousandths thick gasket on top. You can't do that with these, but what happens is when you shorten the rod, put the piston further down the hole, now you've lost compression. So we're not compression that we were, I think, shooting for initially.
Right, we lost a little bit there, and the other thing, when I was assembling it, I was really, really short on clearance here, right?
Piston to valve clearance.
Piston to valve clearance. Okay. And with a stick shift big block, that's not a good thing to be short on.
Yeah, sometimes I read it pretty high.
Right, so...
all the time.
So I had to back the cam up a little bit to get clearance, right?
Okay. So was it in there, the cam timing, was it in there retarded or just not as advanced as you want?
It was retarded at least 2 degrees, might have been 3 degrees, I can't really remember, but it was not where I wanted it. Because if I put it where we wanted it, we were going to be really close.
Okay. And by retarding the cam timing, you're moving the power band down, basically.
Well, your cylinder pressure is lower, generally speaking. That's why this thing only pumped. Well, one of the other reason that it only pumped like 125 or whatever. Because if you just take the same motor and advance it a couple few degrees, you're probably going to pump 150 or more just from that.
Right.
So in some motors it maybe likes being retarded a little bit.
Right.
This is probably not one of them.
Okay.
Especially when we're kind of on our back legs or on our heels with the compression to start with.
Right.
So you add these two things together, and you've got an underperformer.
Yeah. And then you add in the fact that there's no ring tension on this one.
Oh yeah.
Like number 2 legit was cranking 75 psi of compression. That's really in the end what made me want to take it apart. Was number 2 was cranking compression around 75. All the other cylinders were 125, which when I saw 125 I was like, that's really low. But 75 tells you there's something wrong with that cylinder. It's not operating as the same as all the others. And your goal, I think, with any engine ought to be to treat each cylinder like its own engine, just maximize everything. Like I know guys that run different valve flash, different heat range spark plugs, and different timing for every cylinder. Yeah. And their engines run great.
Right. And blower motors, generally speaking, are some of the worst as far as needing individual cylinder stuff.
Right.
Rooch blown stuff. Like a lot of pro modified stuff may have different length rods. Well, sometimes we'll put, even on big block Chevrolets, I'll put different length rods in every hole.
Right.
Because if I got a hole that we're constantly picking on, okay, well, I'll shorten the rod up 20 thousandths, and you think, oh, it's a big sacrifice. No, you're probably going to make more power when you do that.
Yeah.
So
make it all equal, make it all happy.
Right. And some of these things you have to look at it kind of like 8 individual motors. And a big block Chevrolet is probably one of the worst. Not a big block Chevrolet. A roots blower deal is probably one of the worst offenders in that regard.
Right. Yeah, and so, to your point, Blasphemi is back home at my house. I'm going to be doing coil and plug ignitions. The next time we're here, you can do individual cylinder timing. And then when you go back through this, it's going to get a piston that will allow you to advance the cam and, compression height, and everything about it will get changed so that you have the compression ratio you want, and you'll be able to do the valve timing that you want via the cam.
Yeah, we'll start off with a much safer tune-up, and I can about guarantee you we're going to make significantly more power, even like that.
Right.
So we're not going to have to go trying to squeeze out every last little drop, and that's never a situation you want to be in.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, we made 1,000 of the tires. That is enough to get the job done in my car at, let's say, an event like Hot Rod Drag Week. You can run deep into the 8s with that much power. I can only go 850 in that car with the cage that's in it, and I'm not changing that. And a lot of you are asking the question, well, why don't you guys put an intercooler in this car? Solve your air inlet problems. It's not legal at Drag Week. It's not legal at a lot of the drag and drive events. In an A-gas car, you can't run nitrous, you can't run turbos, you can't run an intercooler, you can't run those quote-unquote more modern things that they weren't running in the late 60s. A last resort would be putting it on methanol. That would help with the air inlet charge, but I don't think we have to do that. I think you're there with me. I think that's...
Yeah, it's not like we got 40 pounds of boost.
Right. Yeah.
We're in the teens.
Right. So low teens.
We're in thorough street car territory, so
yeah,
we can manage this without that. If we have to, it's always great to have methanol, but I don't think we need to right now.
No, I'm gonna just say no to meth for now.
Right.
So anyway, for now, we're gonna look at every one of these real quick, get Pete's opinion on them. And then new parts are already ordered. So with any luck, in the next month, I'll be back here to hang out with Pete and assemble this thing. Starting over here, which cylinder is this, number 1?
This is number 1. This one actually looks really good. And if you'll notice, there's none of that frosting. This one looks brand new.
Yeah, it's got a much bigger ring gap there.
Yeah, the ring, you can see the ring tension is much more like it should be.
Yep.
Now let's go to 3. We've already seen 2. 3, the ring looks really good. I'd say it's in a similar situation.
I believe this is the one I replaced at Drag Week.
Okay.
It was
maybe
3 or 5, I forget which.
4. Pretty close to the same, maybe a little tighter ring gap.
Yeah, on the top one there.
Just a little bit, but not bad. It really looks pretty good. Piston looks fine. This one looks brand new. Plenty of ring gap. Tons there. Ring tension. Okay. This is 6. And this one, actually the ring looks halfway decent, but we're starting to see, if you look, this looks frosty, and usually that's a sign of a lot of heat starting to occur. And if you'll look,
oh yeah,
we got a little gap.
Yeah,
Anytime you beat on something like this, what happens is it bounces and eventually it starts to lift. It can't go down very easily without pushing all this down. But if you smack it enough, it's going to curl up, right? And that's what's happening, because this is getting soft. It's annealing. It loses its hardness very quickly. And
we lifted the ringland on that one.
Yeah, if we run this long enough, this is going to completely peel off, and that's really going to be game over.
Oh wow.
Yeah. 7. Our ring tension is a little bit diminished. Overall, the piston doesn't look bad, but that ring is probably not in the best shape, for sure.
Corner cylinder.
All right. This is number 8, and it's got the same issues.
Oh yeah.
See that land is starting to push down a little bit on the exhaust side.
Yep.
A little frosty here. I don't know if this can be seen on video, but you can feel it. It's a little.
It looks a little rough around the edge.
Slight, like this is slick machined aluminum. This has got a little. When it gets a little frosty, it gets a little feel to it. You know.
Yeah.
And we're kind of annealed a little bit. And the thing you notice is that this ring doesn't like to slide around in the bore. It's pinched. It seems like it's actually pinched over here a little bit.
Yeah.
But somewhere anyhow, it's kind of, the clearance that's supposed to be in there is no longer available.
Okay, so we're going to end up replacing all the pistons with new slugs from CP. I think we're using the rods, right?
Yeah, the rods all feel, so generally speaking, like any big power motor, first thing I do when I take it apart is check for slop in the small end of the rod.
Right, try to twist it.
That'll show up. If you're picking on a hole tune-up wise or whatever, that's where it'll show up first a lot of times, right there.
Okay.
And these all feel great. So these rods are going right back in there. They're overbuilt for this application anyhow. This is normally like a rod that we'd have in a 3,000 horsepower motor. So plenty of rod.
Mm-hmm. And because we ripped it apart, our heads are good. Like everything else on that cart, except for the overabundance of silicone I used to seal the pan. Sorry about that. This stuff is all fine. We didn't have a catastrophic failure. But I'm guessing if we'd kept running on that.
Yeah, so
it might have made it through drag week, but it wouldn't have been happy about it.
I have a saying that any motor that's a little bit blowed up is about to be a lot blowed up. Because
you put that on a t-shirt.
Right. What happens is, when these rings go away, you lose oil control, right? Yeah. And compression as well. But like this oil starts to get back into the chamber. Oil is very low in octane and very high in BTUs. So pretty quick, it's like having another spark plug in there that's just kind of random.
Yeah.
And it's going to start, the motor will quickly eat itself, and you'll have rods out the bottom,
Yeah, we don't want that. It's a new engine block.
Right.
I'm actually going to come back here in about 3 weeks because we will have the new pistons. We will have all the bearings, the gaskets, everything we need. And we're going to actually film the assembly of the motor this time around right here at HED.
Right.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, no problem.
And that's it for this episode of Finnegan's Garage. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you all very soon. Go to fsmgarage.com because, as always, every time I blow up Blasphemy, I need you to buy a t-shirt. Thank you. Maybe 2.